Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Psyched, a show where we dabble in psychological experiments and we talk about stuff and we try to make some applications to the workplace. And Racheal is joining me. Andrea, welcome to the show. And as always, today, after a spine-tingling session with forensic psychologists and talking about criminology and how we can detect a potential employee that may come in who's a serial killer with our resident psychologist. And then last week we had Dr. Goh Chi Leong, another great psychologist, and we dabbled a bit on parenting and a number of other things. Today, we're gonna look at a very interesting experiment, right, Andrea? What are we talking about, and what's today's show is going to be about?
All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Those who are tuning in once again, welcome. We're going to talk about something in relation to last week. We talk about, parenting. We talk about relationships. We talk about children. And we're going to go dive a little bit deeper and more applicable to we currently are, right? So this episode is talking about working mothers and also fathers, and how do you juggle between work and your motherhood, your fatherhood, but more importantly, how do you have this wholesome life and be supported by your environment and your organizations. And we're going to start with, as usual, an experiment we got to show. This is called the still face experiment.
Yep.
And before I jump into it, maybe you can watch the video instead. Sashi, you want to pull up the video for us?
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm my girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
Okay, and I feel really bad for the kid.
Yeah, but I mean, this is one of the most replicated experiments, right? I mean, we know that it's I think it was the 1970s, right? If I'm not mistaken, 1975, when this experiment was conducted by a professor at that time from I think UMass, I think, and it's something that was later replicated. I don't know if you know this, Andrea, right? They replicated it not just with mothers, right? They did it with fathers. And then they also replicated it with romantic relationships, right? Where they got couples and one disengaged and one did the still face and the other one is like trying to get the attention back. And it was very interesting that, it sort of solidified that even at a young age, right? And we think babies don't really understand stuff, but that thing that they really need is connection, right? And having that connectivity. And likewise, I mean, even I think the romantic one was done with older couples. the same craving and the need for connection and connectivity was there, right? Your thoughts very quickly on what you thought this
I think
experiment kind of teaches us.
I would love to pose a question to people in the audience, right? Especially with working from home and stuff like that. How many times have you seen like your child come to you and then you're so stressed that you just look at your child like, please don't disturb me at this point of time. How many of you have done that before or seen that being done? I think that's quite interesting to see whether that really works as well with your relationships with your children. Um, and yeah, I think that's interesting that they replicate it with romantic partners as well, because there's a lot of correlation from your childhood to your romantic partners in the future, the relationships that you have. And from last week we talked about connection. If there is a lack of connection, there are a lot of bad and negative outcomes to your relationships and even to yourself. All
Yeah.
right, so I think
And so
yeah.
maybe just very quickly for those who have just joined us, we're talking about the still face experiment. This was an experiment done by Edward Tronick, American psychologist. And this has been replicated many times. It's essentially having a mom interact with the baby in a normal interaction, and then has a still face. The baby gets very upset, but then there's a recovery phase. I think we didn't show that in the video, but where you can reconnect back, and the baby is fine, right? I think the issue sometimes is that many times when we have that still face, I think it happens, like you said, right, Andrea, it happens where parents just disconnected, right? It's so many things in this world that occupy us. We will disconnect, but the opportunity to re-engage and then reconnect, and then you see it goes back to normal again, the interaction. So it's fascinating that but the problem is that sometimes we don't reconnect, and then over time it becomes a long-term issue where that connection is lost. And we see that many with older kids with lost connection with their parents and so on. Sorry, Andrea, were you about to introduce our guest, or you were about to say something?
Not yet. We have one video that we might trigger emotions from our crowd. So we want to show something viral that happened a few years back. And is to say that we understand how it feels like when you're recording at this point of time and somebody just walks in on you, or your kid just comes and mommy, daddy, and then you're like, go away, I'm talking to my boss and stuff like that. So we want to show you this quick viral video. If you've seen this, comment in the comment section. Let us know you've seen it and how you felt when you watched it. I was terrified when I watched that video. So let's play it.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right, carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year because.
All right, and when I don't know how you felt, boss, when you watched this video many years ago. How did you feel when you watched this?
I sorry for our friend, essentially. But I think this is normal, right? I mean, I think and most parents who have gone would have essentially had some sort of experience. And a comment quickly from Matthew, who says this dad was ahead of his time. His experience became one shared by a number of dads, I guess, during the pandemic, right? It's something that I think a lot of us have now experienced. And I think every time I talk to a parent, this online school, there's so many issues and challenges that many parents have experienced. And anyway, we've got a superstar and parental expert and so on who's joining us, right? We want to quickly introduce who's joining us today.
All right, so we have Racheal Kwacz, and she's a child and family development specialist, and she is on a mission to redefine Asian parenting. So she's everywhere. She's on Instagram. She's been invited to a lot of talk shows, BFM. Some of you might have heard her. She's on our podcast as well. She talks about respecting parenting, and that's one of her most famous, master classes. And she also does something called the Racheal method, which she might be able to share a bit here and there later on. So I think the first question we have for Racheal as she joins us in the live stream is, what you're going to talk about, will it also apply to fathers and men, not just working mothers?
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored and so excited to be here. I love I love that we're having such an honest conversation, right? And I love what Matthew said, this idea that like, the dude was ahead of his time. Let me just be honest, as a working mom, the first thing I did was lock the door. I was like, oh, please don't come in for our live. Yeah, so I want to say thank you for having me. How does this relate? You know, I look at this. I love what Roshan said. It started in 1975. I remember studying this in school. And again, that's been replicated so many times because this is the neuroscience of the way our brain works. This is the understanding of the way, a beautiful representation of attachment, a beautiful representation on why the connection matters so much. And I think what I want to be able to start, like, sort of almost introducing everyone to is, if it's not obvious already, right? It's that for children to survive, not thrive, but to survive, they need attachment, right? And that mothers are our first attachment figures. Here's something crazy that not a lot of people realize, but you know, our mothers help write the narrative within on what to expect in terms of response, care, nurture, touch, safe, security, attachment. What does that mean? Like, that's okay, that's like very fancy, but what does that mean? That means the science tells us that within the first 2 months, 60 days, within the first 2 months, babies will develop their lifelong stress response. In the first 60 days, infants will learn how to adapt, respond, repair, regulate everything, the beautiful things that Roshan was talking about, recover, or they learn to distrust, abandon, disconnect, or shut down within the first 60 days and informs them for the rest of their life. That's insane, right? So like one of my favorite trauma experts is this guy called Gabor Mate. And he says, to the child, the mother is the world. And the problem is not the mother. The problem is for the mother to be able to be the world has to be there for the mother. How do the fathers come into the picture? Well, the role of the father is designed to be the world that supports the mother, right? So they facilitate the mothering function. They provide, they protect, you know, hunter-gatherers, they hunt and they go gather food and they make sure we're protected, right? But they are also so very much involved and they participate in the mothering function. I love that this whole show is about, you know, psychological experiments or research or studies. Here's another really interesting fun fact, and this is what I remember as I'm teaching. It's that, you know, if a mother is depressed prenatally, they're more likely to have a premature baby, right? If you think like a baby that's premature that comes in the world not fully developed, already they're struggling with so much. Within the first 60 days, not only do they not only are they then now within the first 60 days, then they have a not as well developed brain, not as well developed nervous system. Yeah. Then they're going to be born premature if the mother is born, if the mother is prenatally depressed. Here's the crazy part. How do the fathers fit in? If the father is depressed prenatally, the baby is even more likely to be even more premature. Why? Because the mother not only has to carry the stress of caring for the baby, the mother has to carry the stress of caring for the father. So how does this come into play? I think it's the idea and is our hope that our father's important, absolutely. Our mother's important, absolutely. Our baby's important, absolutely. And so we need to be having an important conversation on how to support not just the entire family, right? But especially the mothers too. And that's my work and my purpose and, you know, sort of my calling. I want you to bring back to what Roshan said, you know, trauma doesn't happen when what has happened. So the baby gets ignored, the still face, you know, your kid comes in, you're like, why are you here, right? It's not that incident isn't what's traumatic. That incident isn't what informs your stress response for the rest of your life. It is what you did with that. What is the repair? What is the recovery? Yeah. And that's really what we hope to talk about today.
Awesome. All right. Okay. So I'm very like drawn into what Rachel has to say, and I was just very quiet because I'm just absorbing everything she's saying so beautifully. And the truth is, the whole connection and attachment and repair and reconnection. These are all very beautiful things that I hope that this episode can bring light to as well for people who feel like they might not be able to do that again, or if you're a father who thinks you are not part of the picture, that's very, very untrue. The whole motherhood, fatherhood thing is pretty much together. And it's very interesting. One of the coolest experiments I remember back from university that wowed me a lot was, the experiments with, not exactly experiment, but things that happened with what they call as feral children, right? Wild children that they found completely left alone by their parents or their mothers. And they were actually living in the forest. And there were a few that happened, since the, I think, 1960s or 1970s, there was one. And even before that, 1930s, there was another one, the very first wild child that they found in the forest. And it was found that if in that time they were taken care by the animals in the jungle, like either it is the wolves and stuff like that, they actually could repair a lot of their cognitive dysfunction when they came out of it, because they had that attachment and that bond even with animals. And that just wowed me. I'm like, what? I was so shocked when I read this. So interesting to me. And then at the same time, there was this girl called Jeannie. For those of you who are interested in the experiment, go look up Jeannie, the story of Jeannie. And that really brought a lot of it showed that the connection, when you repair it but you do not maintain it, or somebody else is not maintaining that, the person regresses even worse than they first found her. And it just broke my heart, because that is the responsibility of an adult or a caregiver. If you're not gonna repair and maintain, it's gonna just drop all over. So I think, going back to this topic, I think the question here is, currently, what are mothers experiencing, especially what they call as the modern working mother? Long, long time ago, there was this notion that mothers could have it all. You can have the work, you can have the children, you can have the husband, you can have everything you want, your business, your entrepreneurship, and stuff like that. But Rachel, how is the current modern working mother experiencing their lives at this point of time?
Lies. Oh, lies. I think, yes, is it possible to have a career, and is it possible to have kids and have a successful marriage? Absolutely. But I think I want to point back to what you just said. That's so important, right? That somebody can come in and help with the mothering function. Somebody can come in, but if they don't maintain it, that's the key point, is how do we maintain it? Because, I'm sure whether you're a mother or a father listening in here, like, there are some days you are like, man, everybody should film me. I should put this on Instagram because I was like an amazing parent today, right? And then there are those days where you're like, oh, thank God. Like, thank goodness my walls are thick and like my neighbors can't hear. Or maybe if they heard me, that they pretend like they didn't hear. And I think that's our focus of what we need to be getting clear on. How do we maintain it? How do we sustain it? How do we help? Yes, the children are important, but how do we help these mothers and fathers be able to show up at their best? And Sashi, if you don't mind, I'd love to share this beautiful quote. It's by this girl called Kat O'Connor, and it just deeply resonated with me on so many levels. And she talks about the village. Sometimes we don't realize that we have become mothers and fathers, part of a system that keeps parents feeling less than powerful, have them feeling lonely, isolated. And even if they have friends around, in the quiet moments, it can feel like, what has happened? Then we are told that this is normal, that it's expected to feel alone after becoming a mother or a father, that it's just the way that things are, that you are to raise your offspring in your little four walls, separate from the family next door, doing the exact same. Then some families, they realize that we should be coexisting in a village. I don't mean living on top of each other, but more so pulsing together as one. Mothering during the days together as the children play, cooking for each other, laughing, cuddling, crying together, fathering and leading the communal caretaking of each other. Some families realize this would mend so much heartache of the modern family. In fact, It would create thriving and spaciousness, connectedness. It would allow wisdom to be circulated, and it would have women and men being reminded of how incredible they are more often. There would be nurture and play and understanding and healing. Children would be raised by the community, learning from many different parental figures. People would stay connected. The elders would be honored for their wisdom, not forgotten. There would be constant and natural learning from each other. And some mothers and fathers, they don't just talk about what's possible and where we could move parenting. They are the ones making what feels like an ancient understanding new and relevant again. They feel the pull to love and live and mother and father together. And so they do. They do not wait for the village to appear. They create the village. They become an active part of that village. Perhaps it doesn't look the same as it once did, or how it does for many beautiful cultures around the world or in the global pandemic. But recreating the village and community is possible for every family. It requires contribution of love, energy, compassion, empathy, safekeeping, and consideration. Even if you feel as though you don't have much to give, trust the energy always circulates to community. It requires receptivity, because you can have it all and feel none of it if you aren't receptive. Open yourself to the subtle magic that exists. It requires willingness to lean in and choose something different when it feels easier to close the world due to overwhelm or exhaustion. That's exactly when you choose to be open to community. That's exactly when you need a village. I think that's one of the big things, like as a working mother, there are days where I would love, we tap out chicken rice today so that I could be here, right? But very frequently my neighbors next door, they'll go, hey, I made extra soup, and they bring it over, right? Or my husband today, and I said, I've got this really important thing. It's live, so there's no cutting, there's no recording. What can we do to make this happen? We need that village to feel supported and safe. The team that I work with, we've put a lot of things in place so that I can show up at my best at work. And when I'm a mom, I can show up at my best as a mom.
I think that's really beautiful. Right? I mean, I'm reminiscing back to my childhood, and also when I was a bit older, back in Taiping. I grew up in Taiping, in Perak, a little town, and it was a key thing that made me realize, when I grow up and have my own children, I want to be in a community that supported each other. Because my parents would take care of the kids' neighbors, and they would take care of me when my parents had to go and run errands. And that's something that I loved. We were Malays and Chinese, and eventually an Indian family came in, and we all supported one another. And I really wished that it was much simpler now, in the modern world, but it's not, right? And I think there are a lot of comments coming in that I would like to share with you, and some questions for you as well. Starting with Sashi, he says that dads tell scary campfire stories so that kids don't fall their hunting. Aaron says that some find managing pets is easier than managing kids. I'm surprised my cat has not walked in yet on this live stream. But Sashi also asked, hi Racheal, what does the term mothering mean to you? And another question from Eva. Before we answer your question, Sashi, I'll go to Eva's question first. She said that I understand the village idea, and it makes perfect sense. In a community that's becoming more and more individualistic, and especially during lockdown, how can we recreate or stimulate this?
Those are stories from my heart, right? Sashi, I just want to say, Dad tells a scary campfire story so the kids don't follow them hunting. But I think that's what we're trying to sort of point to. It's that, how do our kids learn? Our kids learn best when we walk them through it. Our kids learn best. How is our kid going to learn how to hunt? You think about a lot of kids, right? What we do is we tell them that they're too young. You cannot follow, you cannot do this. And then somehow they reach a magical age, and now you're supposed to know everything. Why you don't know? Why you didn't learn? Didn't you see? I teach you one time, you know that. But actually, I want you to think about the best way that you learn. You learn through watching, through doing, through practicing. And then, some find managing pets easier than managing kids. Here's the sort of science behind that. It's easier for you to manage the pets because you don't have any expectations on how the pet is supposed to react or respond. If that pet decide, like cats, right? If that cat decide don't layan you, you don't take it personally. Whereas if your little one decides, no, mama, I don't like you, you take it personally, and therefore then you react. And that's why it's so much harder. Again, we need to be looking, how do we take care of ourselves so that we're responding, not reacting? What does the term mothering mean to me? I think mothering for me, if I really come down to the heart of it, is just caring for a little one so that they're safe, seen, loved, heard, so that they get to be the best whoever they are supposed to be, right? It's creating that environment that allows them to thrive, right? And that means attachment, both attachment and authenticity. Eva, oh my gosh, my heart, your question. How can we recreate and simulate this? I think, again, we come back to the science. Again, we come back to the science of what we know. Here's my favorite. We do brain-based, heart-centered approaches, which means brain-based, we ask the science of what we know. Heart-centered, we recognize that each family is different. Each person is different. Each mother is different. Like your situation with your kids is going to be, your neighborhood is going to look very differently. I mean, you could say, oh, let's rely on our neighbors. What if my neighbor's a pedophile? Right? That's not so possible. Yeah. Or what if I live in I live in the outskirts of the city and I'm the only house around? Like, what would my kampong look like? What would my village look like? And so I want to take the science of what we know, and then we're going to apply it to you the best way that we can know how to apply it. The science of what we know. What do we need in a village? 4 key components. I want you to think, okay, we're all Malaysians, right? So what do we love? What do we love? Food. So, and I want to, because this is a big guaylo, right? So instead of like, I would like to bring you nasi lemak, but it's very hard to find an acronym out of nasi lemak. So I will bring you pies. And so we need pies. What are pies? We need practical, informational, emotional, social support, right? So I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. 4 key components to building the support system. We need pies. P is for practical. We need tangible hands and feet. Meals, errands, babysitting, acts of service. They're the doers. They're the people that help you do things, right? So like for me, it's like my neighbor that helps me cook. It's my husband that helps me care for Ella Grace while I'm here being Racheal Kwacz, right? And then after this, we're going to switch out. He's going to be Joseph Kwacz and I get to go be mama, right? And it's the doers, the practical support, the hands and feet, the tangible things. And then there's the informational, right? I need places that I can go to for informational support, and it's resources for advice, guidance, mentoring, help you make an informed decision. So, do I give formula? Do I give breast milk? They're like, how much to eat? Chicken good for you? Which chicken to buy? Or it could be parenting advice. Leaderonomics. This is a Psyched show. That's your informational support. It's trusted experts that help you learn and understand. What I want you to be able to see also is when we talk about trusted experts, they're not necessarily like just the professionals. My grandma has an amazing chicken rice recipe. She's also my informational support. Is that clear? And then we have our emotional support. So we got P, which is practical, EI, which is informational. We also need emotional support. Emotional support is people that provide a caring, listening, empathetic ear. We talk so many times about mothers feeling alone, fathers feeling the pressure of needing to provide. And it's because they don't really have places to go where they can just be them, right? Places where someone will hold space to listen. These are the listeners. They help you feel seen, safe, and heard. And here's where it gets confusing. So often we are missing the emotional piece because we have the social piece, and we think that the social piece somehow meets the emotional piece, and it doesn't. They're completely separate. The social pieces are the places that you go for connection, for community, have a great time, the greater good, your charities, or kita jaga kita. They're laughing, hanging out, talking, playing. They're the connectors. They're the people that help you feel wanted and that you belong. And that's very different from having spaces that you feel like you can just be you and share, right? And then after you share, they're the places that you go for information. Okay, this is what's the truth of what I know. And then after the truth of what I know and the things I know I need to do, how do I get practical support to actually get it done? So here's a question for the audience, whether you're mama or you're daddy. I wonder if any of those places resonated with you in terms of, that's it. That's what I'm missing. That's where I needed to, that's what feels so isolating at this time, right? And as you think of those places, you can share in the chat if you'd like to, or it can just be for you if you'd like. I want you to think about, for these places, practical, informational, emotional, social, who are these people for me? And I also want to recognize that for some of us, you can't think of anyone there. And that's why you're feeling the pull. That's why this show and talking about working mothers felt so deeply resonated with you, and that stress and that burden and that care, the burden of caring. And so if I can't think of someone in that area, where could I find them and how could they help me? Or a really big one that people don't think about is there anyone in these areas that I don't feel safe with? Because we can have people that we think provide us emotional support, or think provides us practical support, or I'm letting you take care of my kid, but maybe I don't quite trust you, and so then at work I'm stressing, I can't be at my best at work. Or maybe informational support, but it's half past 6. Sometimes can use, sometimes cannot, right? Or it may be the emotional support where sometimes they gaslight you and they say, oh, but you shouldn't feel this way. Or maybe it's the social support. Very frequently, people mistake laughing together as sarcasm, as making you feel better, and it never makes you feel better. It just makes you feel even more disconnected. So I think it's so important to be thinking about the village in that sense, that it's broken into 4 parts, and to stop and ask, what's right for me? Who are the right people in here? What's stopping me from fully utilizing it? And I think more so than that is if identifying the areas that are missing and how I can have more of that.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent way to look at these 4 areas. I never really broke it down that way, and I think one thing I like to bring up is actually, Racheal, as you said that you are here to redefine Asian parenting, and we know Asian parents are quite thick-faced. They are very, they can't look for help because they say that diminishes my ability as a mother, or my sister will say that she's a better mother than I am, and stuff like this happen all the time. I see it happen in my family too, and I like something that the village says, right? To create that village. I think that's another perspective. If you can't find these areas, maybe it's a sign for you to create that village for people who are just like you, or feeling not just same situations, but the outcomes of the feelings that you're feeling or things that you're struggling with might be similar. I think that's where that connection can also begin. I resonate with that a lot because my sister will tell me, like, I can't talk to everybody about these things because they don't understand, and they will look down on me, and they will think that I'm a horrible young mother, blah blah blah. It goes on and on. It's rumination over and over again, and I'll be like, why don't you look for parenting groups to join, and people to work with? It's just like, I tried, but they don't get me, right? So that's where the emotional is not there. There is no space for her to remind herself that she is ABC before the child, and she is still ABC after the child. I think maybe people who are watching in, if you're a mother who's feeling that way, I think these 4 key components that Racheal shared is very important, very good guidelines to see where you can look for help, or even create that support system already for yourself and people who are like you. So I'm going to go into the next part. I think this episode is fully loaded with a lot of things, but I think coming to the second part of the episode, right? As mothers, they are going to need that support system. Like you say, the world needs to support the mother. So we're going to go into organizations, whether it's the policy of certain companies that have to help mothers. Like, for example, there are a lot of companies who had nursery and daycare for their employees already, like maybe in the past 2 decades that has started. But I'm not sure at this point of time, is there anything new that's happening or you see that should be sort of used in organizations? And we're going to invite Roshan back in because he's more of the expert with companies and organizations. And he's going to ask you a few more questions. But before we go into that, I think there's one comment maybe you can answer. It's by Aaron. He says that growing in Ipoh. So Ipoh is just next door to Taiping. And he said that the community aspect also adds stress where they have expectations of competition, right, among the kids. How can parents balance the different aspects to the community? So I'll leave you with Roshan, and as you answer the question, I'll jump back up.
Thank you, Andrea. I want to be able to say, again, if we come from a place of wholeness, if we come from a place of feeling seen, safe, and loved, the science of the brain tells us that when we come from a story of possibility, the way we see the world is very different versus when we come from the story of unsafe world and unsafe people, the story of despair, which is really where this question is coming from. If the people are like bad and there's competition, but I want you to notice a person that feels fully seen, fully safe, fully secure, fully just sort of poured into, can be in the same exact situation and see something different. They can go into this situation and say, how do I help heal this community? What is the story of possibility here? And I think, again, that's why it's so important. One, not just to look for places and people and spaces where we can thrive and be seen and safe and heard. And it's like, I want to be very clear in saying that it's not people that are exactly the same like us. It's people that help us grow. It's people that help us be in that story of possibility, right? And that's how you really sort of thrive in that community. So that's the first aspect. And then the second aspect of that is that it's the reason why we need these spaces is so that in any situation, no matter what happens, any parenting curveball, we have the tools within us and we know where to parent intuitively. I hope that answers your question, Aaron.
Aaron, and Aaron grew up in Ipoh, right? I'm right next door in Batu Gajah. So, and looks like Andrea's in Taiping too. So anyway, Racheal, one, I'm going to try a long shot here. But I think I when I saw this, the still face experiment with the mothers and babies, I started thinking about the workplace, right? And I think in the workplace, we have many, what we call still face managers. Where you just don't have that empathy. All the things you talked about, having that connection with a child, right? It's almost like your employees, people that work for you are somewhat, needing or expecting similar type of connections. That empathy, that sympathy, that care, that dare. You want a parent to push you also, right? As much as you care, you want to be pushed. You want to be, you may not want it, but you need it definitely. If I translate that into the workplace, right, do all the things you talked about translate to a manager and its subordinate? Again, I know it's not parenting, but I think there are some, at least listening to what you were saying just now, there might be some very interesting permutations.
Absolutely. So much of our programs, the way we phrase it is that it's a lifestyle, right? So it's not just the places where you parent. It absolutely changes the places where you love, lead, and parent, because so many of these principles apply. They apply because, it's like we said at the start, the still face experiment doesn't just apply to babies. They apply to relationships. They apply to friendships. They apply to different people when you are like ghosted and then your whole heart goes, but I want to be able to sort of point you to something that maybe we didn't quite talk about or didn't quite see as you were asking, as you phrasing that. And the first thing I thought was, I think it's so important to ask, first, the manager, what is your managing style? What is your leadership style? What helps you thrive? There must be a reason. I think, again, we don't want to shame. We need all different kinds of people. What is your managing style? And if you're usually still face, or if maybe you're an introvert, how do we help this introvert thrive as a manager, right? Because I think the world comes as, oh, we need the extroverts, we need the carers, we need the bigger than life people. And I don't think that's fair. As someone that's married to an introvert, and as that's very frequently I say, I'm a loud introvert, as someone that needs my time. I think it's very much needing to ask the person, what do you need? Earlier Andrea said, companies are coming out with these nurseries and places at the workplace, childcare at the workplace. My next question for you is that what the employees need. Have we had a conversation with them to say, is this what we need? Right? And I think that's a very important aspect, is we start with the people and we say, what do we need? I think when we are people-centered, when we I'm going to give you a very basic principle of respectful parenting, respectful leading, respectful anything. And it's, we respect ourselves. When we respect ourselves, then we come by saying, I need to have my cup filled. I need to have boundaries. I need to ask for what I need. So it starts with me. And then I can respect others. Right? And so when I can respect others, I can then ask them, what do you need? And how do you thrive? And what are places that I think for me, I thrive best when you leave me alone. Like if you continue checking in on me, like if you micromanage me, like I fall apart, because to me, I need spaces to just like think, right? And so on the other hand, there are people that I like it when you hold my hand. I like it when you walk me through each step. So again, that people matter, respect each other, respect yourself. And the last thing is respect the environment, because we also want to be very clear that it's also an organization, right? We still, okay, like take care of people, but still have to make money, right? Like, okay, take care of people, but we still have to be responsible to our shareholders. There is still a service that needs to be given. So there is a way to meet all three. And the way that we're going to do that in workplaces, coming back to what we said earlier, pies, we're being pies. What are the practical support that I can provide in my company? If we're all working from home now, what are the ways that they need doers, that they need hands and feet, that they need tangible practice support? For some mothers, it's going to be, hey, can you cater me a meal like every Friday? And then like every Friday we have a team meeting. And so on Fridays, can we cater meals to our company, right? It could be something like that. But again, it will look different for every family. So every family, every company, every organization. So it's to ask what are practical ways that we can help, right? And then what are informational ways that we can help? Very frequently, they have experts like me or other people come into companies and help them with leadership programs or help them with parenting programs. You think about all the professional development that we do as professionals. There's never any space where somebody says, hey, come and let me just teach you a few tools to thrive at the workplace and thrive at home. If you thrive at home, when you come at work, you're fully present, right? So what are some informational, solid, trusted advice? Do these people have places when they have a problem at work? Do they have places that they can go to ask for help? Fathers and mothers. I don't want to just focus on the mothers. It's the fathers that need help too. Because if the father is seen, then when the father comes up, he's not bringing me the stress of work. And then as a mother, I'm not carrying the stress of my child and mothering and carrying the stress of your work and your workplace at home too, right? And then everyone thrives. Yep. Emotional support. What are some ways that how do I help my team feel seen? Is there time for rest? Do I celebrate them? And then the last is just social ways. Do we have places that we play, that we create, that we gather? Do we hire for culture? I think those are really important things to think about.
Right.
See the person and then ask what's missing.
Fantastic. I got a question from Eva Lim, another Eva. So welcome, Eva number 2. And she's responding to Aaron's earlier question about environment and stuff. And I think one thing she talks about is the child somehow has to fulfill the parents and the community's expectations. And I think expectations, right? Otherwise, the child may be seen as an outcast compared to the others. And I think expectation is another piece that we didn't really get to talk a little bit about, because expectations, like you mentioned it, right? Expectations, I think in a comment you mentioned to Andrea earlier on is that, with a pet, there's no expectations. Both ways, right? The pet doesn't expect anything and you don't expect. But I think this way there's many expectations, right? You are looking at how you treat your child, and you're looking and seeing how is the community looking at you as a mother or as a father, and then you're saying how, and then your child is looking at you as and expecting things and have certain expectations of a mother and a father. Likewise, you have certain expectations of a child. You should get your I don't know how many number of A's and this and that and so on and so forth. And expectations seem to weigh everybody down. How do we manage expectations?
It's going to be a really simple answer. It's not necessarily the answer that you want, but I feel to me this is the best answer. And we manage expectations by, again, coming home to the person. We say, what do you need? How do I help you feel safe, seen, secure? If I feel safe, seen, and secure, lantak lah, I'll do whatever I want, right? I'll do whatever I want. And because I'm doing whatever I want from a place of worthiness, from a place of wholeness, great things always happen. It's when I'm coming from a place, lantak lah, but I'm coming from a place that's like, it's me against the wall. I have to rebel. I have to do things different. I have to go out and get things. I have to, that's when we become workaholics. Or that's when we become perfectionists. Or that's when we do things that hurt other people because I want to be able to prove myself. There's a very different feeling, right? So when I come from a place of wholeness, when I come from a place of worthiness, when I come from a place that believes that I'm whole, able, and competent, I have things to contribute to the world, magic happens. Because the way a world works, the best part about this conversation is that you are not the same. The best part of this conversation is that everybody has something, a little bit of their magic too. My was it Sashi or that talked about hunting and not telling scary campfire stories, right? We need the people that are going to go rogue and go into scary campfire stories. Yeah, so I think that's very.
And at the start, I know it's been such an engaging conversation. Time just went by. I know at the start, Andrea talked about the Racheal method. Talk us through this a little bit,
Yeah, so the Racheal method really came from, years of working with children and teachers and professionals and doctors and just really understanding that at the heart of parenting was we wanted brain-based, so informational, right? Brain-based, but also very much heart-centered approaches that nobody wants to be the same like everybody. They all want to be seen. But like for me to be, I guarantee you every single parent in here, or even if you're not a parent, you read all these books and then there's real life and it doesn't quite happen. And it doesn't quite happen because there's a disconnection. When you parent from your heart, when you parent with the heart knowledge and not the head knowledge, it ignites because it becomes yours. You take full ownership. Trauma-informed simply means that we understand that there's so much more beneath the surface. There's so much more that needs to be heard and seen. And so that's really the Racheal method. It's just sort of meeting parents and leaders and professionals where they're at and say, how do I help you thrive?
And I do know that you have a number of events and shows that are coming up in a bit, right? If I'm not mistaken, a couple of sorry, this is Andrea, right? Who's talking about the shows that are coming up. Sorry, you had this thing called Respecting Parenting, right? The masterclass that's coming up.
Yeah, I love, this was during my period of rest. So during my period of rest, what I realized was that there was such a need for parents to be met. Just the foundational stuff, the little things like see the child, the little things like how does the brain work? So very much all the things we talk about today. So the neuroscience of tantrums is really in the still face experiment, what's happening in the brain of the child, what's happening in the brain of the mother. Earlier you talked about bid for connection. When your child comes in, how do we, that's a bid for connection. When your husband comes in and says, hi, honey, here's a cup of coffee, that's a bid for connection. How do we meet those bid for connections and relationships? We have a whole week that's dedicated just for, not just if you're a single parent, not just if you are divorced, or not just if you're co-parents, but also like how do we help the entire family unit thrive? And we talk about building core relationships. And so that's really what I wanted. So the theory is called respectful parenting, but I wanted to come home to respecting parenting, and that really meant respecting the parents.
Nice. Just two more comments. I think Aaron Dawson says, it's important for us to have community and to be able to identify the negative aspects and continue to create a safe and secure relationship for our future. And Eva responded, I think, by this is Eva Lim, by saying the pressure increases, such as when the exam results are released and the child shares this good news or whatever news with the parents, then the parents will turn around and say, hey, the neighbors or relatives and so on got more A's and so on. And this is, I think, tagging on to your comment on expectations that was out there. So I think, Racheal, we can get access to your workshops at your website, right?
Yes.
Your own website. Yep. Okay. And it's down there in the link and in the social media feeds. You can look it up and just click there and you'll be able to get full access to that. Andrea, I know you had a couple more statistics that you want to talk a little bit about, right?
Yes, I think these are two very important statistics, and I hope that you will bring organizations, and especially if you're a business leader or a HR manager, to change some of the ways that your organizations are helping support mothers and fathers in their time of their lives at this point of time. So there's one statistic in 2013, The Atlantic, they did a research and they said that 43% of women with children leave their jobs. This includes first-time mothers, mothers who are having second children, and whatsoever. In that 5 years, they do not return to their jobs. But in 2019, closer to our time at this point of time, 29% of first-time mothers return to full-time work in the first 3 years after maternity leave. That means 71% of first-time mothers do not return to work. And we're not saying that you don't have an option to be a housewife full time if that's your choice. But most of the research actually shows there is a lot of negative sort of connotations, or rather a lot of obstacles for them to actually return to work. They usually return to work getting a lower pay grade for what they actually deserve and more. So these are issues that I think are very prevalent even at this point of time. And like Racheal, hit smack on just now, she said, it doesn't matter whether they have childcare in the company. It's what matters what your employees need, right? Maybe you have childcare and everything, but you're making your mothers and your fathers work twice as hard, twice the amount of time. They don't even have time to go and look at their child during lunchtime. So it doesn't work. So I think that those are two steps I think I want to bring to light, especially for HR managers, leaders of companies and organizations, to remember that this statistic is not just because people choose to be housewives, but there's something wrong with our system as well. Yeah.
And Racheal, maybe as we close out, I know it's almost an hour now. As we close out, just if you could leave us with one nugget of wisdom or one sort of final piece of advice to mothers and fathers out there, and especially those who are struggling in this time, and clinging on to their roles in the workplace, what sort of a golden nugget would you leave with us as we close out this show?
I just sat here and the specialist in me wants to say all these like beautiful science-backed things, right? But the mama in me knows that all I need to hear is that thank you so much for the work that you do. What you're doing is so very important. I love what Sashi ends with: the mothers need some mothering, fathers need some fathering. But more importantly, somebody else said earlier, the work that you do, as quiet, as slow, as sometimes the days are long and the years are short, right? But you're changing a generation. The little kids, I want you to just notice today when your kid walks into the room when you come home, notice the way their face lights up. Notice how excited they are to see you. That is the work that you're doing. I think sometimes we miss that. We miss that in the expectations. We miss that in the, my sister said, you're not doing very good. My sister said the other person. I think our benchmarks are the looks on our faces, our kids' faces when they walk in. They love you. We love you. We see you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Fantastic. Well said. And then, at leaderonomics.com, if you go to the site, there's tons of articles on parenting, highly recommended, tips for stay-at-home mums and dads. And then there's another really good one, which is the best of both worlds, stay-at-home mother or working. So check out some of these articles. You can click the links below. And Andrea, as we wrap up, your final thoughts and take us home, Andrea.
Take us home. All right, before we take us home, I think there are a couple of things that are coming up. As usual, we got to promote some events and what we're having. So you guys keep stay excited and join us as well. I think we have a few incoming episodes in the next few weeks. Please check us out. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn, and also reach out to Racheal on LinkedIn and her website for more, informational, practical, emotional, and social tips and tricks, and also the way that she becomes a mama full time as well. Yes, she's also on Instagram, very cute and very interesting videos that she puts up for smaller bites of wisdom and information. Please do follow her over there. All right, so I think my final thoughts is, if I were to sort of sum up both last week and this week's episode together, the key word here is connection. And connection doesn't happen without listening. The connection doesn't happen without asking. And the connection doesn't happen without repair and re-engagement. So I think those are a few things that really resonate with me, and hopefully resonates with the rest of you who are watching. So thank you once again, Racheal, for joining us. It's been an honor. Thank you, everybody who's been watching. And last thoughts to you, Roshan.
Yep. No, and thanks everyone. We'll see you next week on the 15th of September, one day before we celebrate Malaysia Day. And as always, special thanks to Budaya and Happily for bringing this show to us. And we're going to end with a short clip on Happily and Budaya. So for those who want to engage with your employees, you want to partner with your employees, you want to take care of them, you want to care for them and dare them, check out Happily or Budaya. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great week ahead, and happy Thursday, happy Friday, and happy weekend.